Good evening and welcome to BBC London. Coming up, could a third runway at Heathrow take off under the government's plans for economic growth? We'll look at the impact of airport expansion plans in West London.
I think it's a good idea. At the end of the day, there's so many aeroplanes flying. Let more money come into the economy.
In terms of pollution, it's not that great for the local area, like local schools.
Also coming up on the programme, the challenge of cleaning up London's polluted waterways. Will the capital's rivers really be swimmable within 10 years? Plus, still waiting to be made safe, the London school buildings where aerated concrete was discovered nearly 18 months ago. And the saxophonist and broadcaster on a mission to get us into grassroots music venues in the capital. Thanks for joining us. I'm Laxmi Gopal. The government is expected this week to make an announcement about a third runway at Heathrow Airport. Debate over whether a third runway should be built has been going on for years. All the while, the number of people using Heathrow continues to grow. In its first year, 63,000 passengers travelled through it. By 1951, this had risen to just under 800,000 in a year. Well, let's compare that to today. It's up to nearly 84 million passengers in the past year. So, what's the future of the world's busiest two-runway airport, which has been running at 98% capacity for a decade? Victoria Hollins has this report.
Heathrow has very little room for more planes to take off and land each day. It's the busiest two-runway airport in the world, and in December, the airport's new boss told us they're not enough.
If we are to keep pace with economic growth, we need to expand beyond what we can do at the current two runways.
A third runway at Heathrow has been discussed for 20 years, and the Chancellor has indicated the government will likely support one. It was 2009 when the then Labour government announced its support for expansion for economic reasons. But in 2010, the coalition Conservative Lib Dem government scrapped the plans. In July 2015, the airport's commission said there should be a new runway northwest of Heathrow. Then 3 years later, MPs voted overwhelmingly in favour. But in February 2020, the Court of Appeal ruled the plans illegal on environmental grounds. 10 months later, that was overturned, meaning legally it can go ahead.
What you see would mostly disappear because the boundary of the airport would be at the end of that cream-painted wall running across the street. All of these houses would go.
Justine Bailey lives in Harmondsworth, which would be partially demolished for a third runway. She's got big concerns about the environment too.
It wouldn't be a viable community. You know, the pubs, the shops will go because there aren't enough customers. Pollution and noise. I mean, Sadiq Khan has been working very hard to improve both in London. We're actually part of London here and we'd like to see the improvements as well.
The government says it's on a drive for growth, and some business groups say a third runway is vital for that, as well as delivering jobs.
Other cities in Europe and indeed globally are stealing a march on us. They're improving their connectivity. They're improving the number of cities they can connect to directly, and that makes it a competitive advantage for them and a competitive disadvantage for us. But it's more than just that. Anyone who's flown from Heathrow recently will know that the airport's absolutely full.
There are huge issues to consider around cost, the environment and time frame. So what do people living nearby in Hounslow think?
I think it's inevitable. Should have it, yeah.
I think it's a good idea. At the end of the day, there's so many aeroplanes flying. Let more money come into the economy. It'll be very good.
Environmentally, probably bad. I mean, I live kind of under a flight path and sometimes it's really noisy. But jobs-wise, I guess it's good, though you could probably build the economy a different way.
If the government does give a green light to a third runway at Heathrow Airport, it's likely there'll be a hugely complex planning process that follows. And it's also likely that environmental campaigners will challenge any plans every step of the way. This is not going to be a quick process. Victoria Hollins, BBC London.
Well, let's get more on this now from our political editor, Tim Donovan, who's in Richmond tonight for us. Tim, first of all, let's look at the politics of this. So, is it actually deliverable politically?
Well, on the face of it, with such a big majority, Labour should be able to say that they don't see this as a huge problem in terms of Westminster politics, not least also because it was the Conservatives proposing this just a few years ago, and it would seem quite odd to many if they were to change their position again. Some would say opportunistic, but who knows what will happen there. The last time MPs voted 6-7 years ago in London, among London Labour MPs, it was about 2/3 against, 1/3 in favour of those who voted. But it's pretty difficult to read that yet because Labour are now in government and we just don't really know where some of the new intake, a lot of new MPs in the capital, where they stand.
And Tim, a big question is how the government are actually going to head off some of the considerable concerns that there are.
Yeah, you've got a lot of people saying that the claims of business and Heathrow and the government that you get a huge economic benefit from this is overstated. You'll have concerns, particularly in areas like this, around noise, not just at night, but obviously thousands, tens of thousands more homes are going to be affected by noise, and much further or closer as well to the airport. And then you've got the whole issue of climate change with Ed Miliband, the Net Zero Energy Secretary, just saying in the last couple of hours, or insisting that it won't go ahead unless the UK's legally binding carbon budgets are stuck with. Of course, many people are going to doubt that. There is a possibility, some would say a likelihood, says the local council leader here, that there will be another legal action.
If we can launch a legal challenge, it's something we'll consider very, very carefully.
What would be the point of issuing a legal challenge when the last one you lost eventually, Heathrow won?
Well, because the public opinion is still there and people want to see their local council standing up for them, and there may be new arguments which we simply hadn't considered on the last time. And also, there are the 4 challenges that the Labour Party themselves had set out. If they've already gone into an election with those 4 challenges which they need to have met, and then reverse their decision without proper consultation, that may in itself be basis for challenge.
So, Tim, a lot of arguments to consider there, but how much would all this cost?
Well, one, it seemed quite an informed estimate to the Times at the weekend, said anything between 40 and 60 billion to build. I mean, the key thing to say about that is at this stage, or would be, private money. There's no indication that the Labour government would provide public funding. But look at the scale of that, and when you consider some of the construction challenges, maybe it's quite realistic. You know that the M25 is going to have to be diverted, or the runway is going to have to go above a newly tunnelled M25. We now have to wait and see what Heathrow Airport do, whether they put the plans forward, and then we can get an idea of a timetable, but there'll then have to be a planning inquiry, so we're many years away.
Tim Donovan, our political editor in Richmond, thank you. Lots more to come, including
It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday.
A special celebration involving 25 buskers on the Underground. But first, it might be a bit too cold for many of us to attempt an outdoor swim on a day like today. But even if you were brave enough, the fact is some of the capital's rivers aren't clean enough. The Mayor wants to try to change that with a plan to make rivers in London swimmable in 10 years' time. But how realistic is it? Here's our environment correspondent, Tom Edwards.
London's third largest river, the Roding in East London. The Mayor wants rivers like this to be swimmable in 10 years, but there are many problems, like this. Illegal sewage outfalls. There could be dozens here no one knows about.
The Environment Agency wasn't aware, and only by coming here and investigating it have I actually been able to bring it to the attention of the authorities. And we know that it's illegally spilling because of all of the sewage debris, like all these wet wipes here. They haven't come from surface water, that's from sewage, and so we know this is illegally spilling into the river.
The River Roading Trust is trying to improve the river. Road runoff is also a huge problem.
The discoloration of the water going straight into the river.
A toxic mix of chemicals from vehicles. In some of London's rivers, it's so bad, only leeches can survive.
All of the heavy metals, oil, pollutants, PFAS, forever chemicals go straight from the road into the river. And in the long term, that might even be worse than sewage, because at least sewage can naturally break down. A lot of these chemicals just sit in the silt and will have to be remediated.
Access and rubbish are also a problem.
Once this section is open, you'll be able to walk from the Thames all the way up into Essex along the Roading. And of course, if people can walk along here, that also means that eventually they'll be able to swim here too.
Come on in, the water's lovely.
Swimming in rivers is becoming more popular. This is Teddington. On the Thames, though, east of Putney Bridge, it's not allowed. The super sewer will help stop sewage, but not on the tributaries like the Roding. Campaigners, though, remain optimistic.
It is a formidable challenge, but it is solvable. What we need is information to identify the problems where pollution is entering the river, and then real action to tackle that. And then I fundamentally believe it is possible to make this river swimmable to the public within the next decade.
The Mayor says he will hold the regulators and utilities to account and address all of the issues. River charities think it will take considerable political will and investment to make rivers swimmable. Tom Edwards, BBC London.
Well, let's take a quick look now at some of the day's other news. A 12-year-old girl died after drinking a milkshake made in an unwashed blender at a London cafe. Mia St Hilaire had a tree nut allergy and had a severe reaction at the Pop-In cafe on Southwark Park Road in 2023. The cafe's been fined £18,000 and its operator's been given 100 hours of community service. A 30-year-old man has been remanded in custody, charged with murdering his 75-year-old father in Putney. Rory Talbot from Wandsworth is accused of killing Mark Talbot, who was found stabbed to death at a property in the early hours of Friday morning. And one of Berkshire's most colourful and controversial roads is facing growing calls to be changed. The California Crossroads in Finch Hampstead was painted with leaves last year, but critics say it looks like a playground and that it isn't safe. Wokingham Borough Council said it was designed to show pedestrians have priority, but more than 1,400 people have signed a petition for it to be repainted to, they say, reduce the risk of a serious accident. Next tonight, almost a year and a half since concerns were raised over potentially unsafe concrete in some of our public buildings, many are still waiting to be worked on or rebuilt, including a number of schools and colleges in London. Many students continue to be taught in temporary classrooms. Frankie McCamley has visited a secondary school in Haringey dealing with the ongoing impact.
More than 18 months ago, these classrooms at Parkview School in Haringey were abandoned, deemed structurally unsafe because of rack concrete.
We lost the entire maths block and some of the humanities block. So whilst there's no rack in the corridor spaces, all of these classrooms have rack concrete above the temporary ceilings. So they were no longer able to be used.
So how many classrooms like this have you lost?
So we've lost 15 classrooms and there is rack in all of these spaces now. And you can imagine if they're left quite quickly, they become quite decrepit, but no one is allowed in these areas anymore.
Instead, pupils had to return to online learning before being moved into these temporary blocks until the work to remove the unsafe concrete was complete. So what is reinforced, autoclaved, aerated concrete, or rack? It's lightweight, bubbly concrete used widely from the 1960s to the 1980s, usually in roofs, sometimes in walls and floors. It's weaker than traditional concrete and it's past its lifespan. Parkview School is one of 29 in the capital that had rack concrete. We contacted all of them. Only 7 got back to say work has been completed. Bishop Douglas School in East Finchley sent a statement to say whilst rack is being removed, it caused considerable disruption to our school community. And once finished, there will be no enhancements to the overall fabric of the school or improvements to the learning environment. It said it had been overlooked for years for a much needed full rebuild. The Department for Education has said for too long our school estate has been neglected. It continues, we are increasing investment next year to £2.1 billion to improve the condition of school buildings, and targeted funding is being provided to schools affected by RAC. Despite no physical work being done here at Parkview, the head is remaining optimistic.
In terms of time frame, I'm hoping that sort of early 2027 completion for that repair. But as I say, we have been really fortunate with the temporary buildings put in place. So from a children's perspective and a teacher's perspective, there's not really been any loss of service, and their education hasn't suffered for that.
But it's clear that hasn't been the picture everywhere, and there are still some school buildings across the capital abandoned and unsafe. Frankie McCamley, BBC London.
Now, you'll know if you're watching the news a little earlier, ceremonies have been taking place today to mark 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz. And one London artist has been sharing how she discovered in recent years what had become of her family. Sarah Davidman always knew her father had arrived in Britain having fled Nazi Germany as a 14-year-old, but it's something he never spoke about. A family photo album emerging led her to uncover some answers. Tolu Adeoye reports.
This is a photograph of my Aunt Susie as a child, and she put together the photograph album.
It was following her father Manfred's death a decade ago that Sarah first came across a family photo album that would lead to a journey of discovery about the German Jewish side of her family. She knew he arrived in Britain on the Kindertransport as a teenager with his older sister, but the details of life before that had always been a mystery.
My father had never been able to talk about his experiences in Berlin growing up as a young Jewish boy, so I didn't know really anything about the family that had lived there. It was amazing because there was this whole family living in Berlin, going out for days out, going for holidays to the coast, aunts, uncles, cousins. And I kept looking through the album. And then when I got to photographs that started up again at the end of the Second World War, I realized that quite a lot of the people who had been at the beginning of the album didn't reappear later on.
Through her research, including with the help of the Wiener Library in London, Sarah uncovered over 130 pages of documents that revealed the fate of her family, with members murdered in concentration camps, including Auschwitz, some escaping abroad, and even living hidden in Berlin with false documents.
I had known that my father had been deeply affected by what he'd gone through, but I hadn't understood any of it. And I think learning about all of this, it's given me a connection to this history.
At the same time as investigating her family's story, Sarah, who is an artist, used photography and video to create work which became an exhibition, with some pieces featuring her own blood and hair.
Using blood and also my own hair, that was very important in terms of making a connection between myself and my family now and this history. So it's not, the project isn't just about what happened then. It's about the family that has survived despite what happened in Germany.
Today, on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, Sarah thinks it's essential to continue to speak about what happened and mark Holocaust Memorial Day with its message to remember the millions of people killed under Nazi persecution, as well as those during more recent genocides. Tolu Adeoye, BBC London.
And the BBC is marking the day with special programming across TV, radio and online. You can see full coverage marking 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz on the BBC News website. We're going to take a look now at how important independent grassroots venues are to London's music scene, for musicians getting those first gig bookings and for audiences looking for a more affordable night of entertainment. After the pandemic, many venues never reopened. Some of those that remained still face financial challenges. This week, fans are being encouraged to get behind independent music. Award-winning saxophonist and broadcaster Yolanda Brown joins me to explain all. Welcome, Yolanda. Thanks for coming in. So before we get on to that, first of all, we just have to establish how important it is for London as a whole. It's not just for the musicians and the audiences, is it?
No, I think it's part of the full ecosystem of live music venues. You know, it's wonderful that we have the big stadiums, the arenas, but we need these sort of different experiences to have a better commerce offer for people that come in, for tourists and for the locals, and as you say, for the musicians and the people that frequent these venues.
And how worried are you about our current state of independent venues and grassroots music?
I think it's great that we're bringing awareness to the fact that it is really difficult for venue owners. I myself, 4 months in now, have become a grassroots venue owner myself. And, you know, it's really expensive. You want to make sure that you've got great bands and you're supporting your local community. So if you want to do it right, it is really expensive. But for the audiences to keep coming, keep supporting these venues, you will build a fantastic community.
Did it make you apprehensive when making a decision to do that at this kind of current time?
No, I think I always had the vision of Soul Mama. I wanted people to enjoy great food and wonderful music, sort of a really diverse programming, and I knew that a grassroots venue was a great place to do that. And so I thought about the concept, I thought about the people enjoying it. And
we can see you playing a little bit now as well. People get to see your music in action. And I want to come to your role as an ambassador for Independent Venue Week, which starts today. What does that involve?
So being here with you, spreading the word about how important it is to go to. It's not even just about supporting. Go and enjoy the amazing offering that grassroots venues have. It's not just about the music and what happens in those four walls. It's the full community and the offering that there is there. And so up and down the country, there are going to be amazing venues involved in Independent Venue Week and just spreading the news and having great concerts. I've got a concert over in Soul Mama over the weekend on Saturday, celebrating Bob Marley, and it's great to be able to do that as part of Independent Venue Week.
There you go, you're spreading the word already. Thank you, Yolanda. That's a great message to get across, and hopefully Londoners will want to get involved. So Yolanda Brown, thank you for coming in today. Now let's continue with the music theme, because Transport for London is turning 25 and the occasion is being celebrated through 25 buskers who help make the commute more musical. The anniversary is also being marked by passengers being invited to share any special memories of the transport network. Gemma O'Reilly has more.
It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday.
25 musicians to mark 25 years of Transport for London. These artists were invited down to Liverpool Street Station to perform their tracks and tell us their stories.
I was working in a coffee shop where you have the rooms on the top, and the guy, I never studied music, and the guy just ran away with all my stuff. So I didn't want to bother my parents in Portugal, and I stayed homeless. And I stayed in the Waterloo station. And the next day, a street performer came to me with a broken guitar, 2 strings, and he said, do something for your life.
Susanna taught herself to play music and started to make money from busking, which is now her main income.
In 2-3 weeks, like the little bits of pennies that people gave me, I managed to have a room, and I started from there.
This resilience is something all these artists resonate with while trying to attract the attention of busy London commuters.
Nothing compete with playing live music to complete strangers. People opt and elect to go to a concert. These people have no choice. They're just subjected to your music. So when that chimes with them and you get a positive response from that, it can be a very, very positive experience.
And it's not just music that was used to mark the 25 years. A silver rounder was unveiled at the station and special TfL announcements from celebrities and posters to mark the occasion. And music has long been part of TfL. Busking has been available on the Underground for 22 years, and Caroline was part of the busking scheme from the beginning.
When they started the busking scheme, I was like, yes, and I joined up straight away, and it's just been a thread running through my whole adult life as a musician. It's just one element of, you know, connection with people and your sounds and stuff.
And that connection is often infectious for us all. Even me, when I was asked to get up myself at the station.
You feel that my senses come feel me.
Gem O'Reilly, BBC London.
Now, you may have noticed that I've had a quick outfit change, like Lady Gaga and the Met Gala. What do you think? This on-brand jumper was sent to us by the Nimble Fingers Knitting Group in Chadwell Heath. You might remember we featured them on the programme late last year. They knit items for baby banks and hospital patients. And after the coverage, they were inundated with donations of wool from viewers. And as a thank you, they've knitted us this rather splendid jumper. So thank you to them from us for this, and they wanted to also pass on their thanks to you for donating the wool, which will continue their good work. So thanks all round. Well, let's see if it's jumper weather coming up for us. I certainly felt it today. Let's get the forecast from Kirsty McCabe. Well, Kirsty, jumper and brolly today if the brolly wasn't going to be swept away by the gusts we had.
Perfectly summed up, Luxmy. In fact, keep that jumper handy because Thursday morning's looking pretty chilly. So you may well need the jumpers by then. But in the meantime, well, still looking very unsettled out there. This is the picture from earlier on. If you were lucky enough, you may have managed to spot a rainbow or two today because you just need two things for the rainbow: sunshine and showers. Plenty of that on offer. If you're really eagle-eyed, you might just be able to spot a second rainbow there, a double rainbow. So very special scenes for many of us. Of course, there were some pretty heavy showers and they brought in some hail and thunder. So a lot of hail around, soft hail, growlpool, we call that in the winter. So it's been a pretty unsettled day today, and it's all because of this area of low pressure. You may have heard about this already. Storm Herminia, named by the Spanish Met Service, and it's brought with us for us some very strong winds. So there's still some wind warnings out. Met Office yellow wind warnings for gusts maybe 50 miles per hour inland. So still continuing through the evening with those very strong winds, feeding in quite frequent blustery showers. So more showers overnight, fairly strong winds. It's not going to be too cold. Overnight lows 6 or 7 Celsius. As we go through tomorrow then, it starts off very windy still with those strong and gusty winds and still more showers to watch out for. Quite a cloudy day in fact. So there's a chance of getting wet, but the winds are easing as we go through the day. So things slowly improving, maybe a glimmer of brightness into the afternoon, and the temperatures fairly similar to today, maybe a notch higher, 7 to 10 Celsius. It looks as though we'll see the winds easing as we go through the middle part of the week, but things are set to get a little bit interesting. We've got one area of low pressure moving away, but another one coming in, and this one could track a little bit further north. So at the moment, it looks as though it's a dry and bright start, and then we'll see the cloud thickening from the south and the rain moving in later on. So Wednesday could turn pretty wet through the day, but as I mentioned, things are going to turn a little bit colder for the middle part of the week. Thursday looks as though it'll be a frosty start, and then some lovely spells of sunshine to come. Jumper weather.
Well, Kirsty, I will follow your advice and I will keep hold of this jumper for Thursday. Thank you. Now, just before we go, you can go to our website to find out why 11,000 bundles of waterweed are being used for a historical rescue job in East London. Search BBC London to explain all. I'll be here later with your news at 10:30, but for now, from all of us, have a very good evening. Goodbye.